quick announcement, and we're co-sponsored and co-organized together with this Mongolian Culture Center and the National University of Art and Culture. And so from now, the delegates from National University of Art and Culture, they have a book gift for Smithsonian Institution.
Will be a welcome addition to our library here. So thank you so much, and we hope for many more of these meetings and build our library. Okay, this is, we will convene now the annual meeting of the American Center for Mongolian Studies. I want to thank you all for attending. We're not going to be here very long. We just have a legal requirement to hold an annual meeting and to receive any recommendations or comments from the group. So we have a fairly short program. If I get my notes here. First of all, I have some short comments about the treasurer's report, and I won't go into details about it. We have a statement here from our auditing group, and they have found us to be sound financial organization with no special recommendations for changes in our policy or our expenditures or income. The company is Larson Gross, and I have a couple of comments I'll read from our treasurer, who unfortunately was not able to, Meredith Giordano, was not able to be here tonight. But basically, she said, we've signed a letter of agreement with Larson Gross to commence the financial review of our 2019 financial statements as per normal procedures. The review comprises two parts: a financial report statement for the year and a review of these statements. Over the last few months, we will be working closely with Larson Gross and our accountants to provide the necessary financial documents. An overview of the budget for FY20 was discussed at the last executive meeting, and everything is in fine shape there. Finally, with advice from Larson Gross and support from our accountant, we have made good progress in streamlining the US and UB financial record systems and reporting QuickBooks. We're now working closely with our accountant to further refine the monthly budget reports and expenditures, tracking for regular discussion on the financial matters for the executive committee. So we seem to be in pretty good shape financially, and anybody who would like more details about this can request that, and I will provide it. I'm here as sort of like president of the board. Our executive manager, Charles Krusenkopf, is off in the wilds of Vancouver area up there in Canada, was not able to join us today. So I will ask our outgoing executive, Jonathan Addelton, who has been a wonderful director of the program for the last couple of years. He has done a fantastic job filling in lots of nooks and crannies and so on. And he is going to give you, he's going to give you a kind of a rundown of where we are as a society. And Jonathan?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it a bit short, but ACMS, American Center for Mongolian Studies, is something that I'm very proud of. I think adds a lot to Mongolian studies. We celebrated our 15th anniversary this year, and since a number of people here, many people are not necessarily members, I do want to give an overview of different kinds of things. Again, thank you, Bill, for that. One of the things to start with is simply ACMS is a member of the Center of American, or the Council on American Overseas Research Centers, KORC. It's headquartered in the Smithsonian. It's been around for many, many years. One thing I point out, during my foreign service career, I went to 10 countries. 7 of them have KORCs. That includes Yemen, Jordan, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Cambodia, and Mongolia. As you can appreciate, some of those 27 members, Egypt, Greece, Cyprus, other ones, They have long-standing histories with big endowments. ACMS is one of the newer ones, but I think it is definitely on the map and makes a contribution. And again, I think of the 7 of the 10 countries. I think it's fortunate that Mongolia is included in that list of 27 countries. The other thing I like to say is that ACMS is an organization whose center of gravity is Mongolia. I think of all the universities involved in Mongolian studies, of all the entities, ACMS is one of the, maybe the only one, or one of the very few that has an active physical presence in Ulaanbaatar, where most of what happens. We're in the UB Public Library. We have that the great downtown location. Appreciate the partnership with the public library. But we have probably the largest collection of English books outside the National Library on Mongolia specifically. It's about 7,000 books. A lot of researchers, not just from the United States. They make that their kind of home away from home. Try to be welcome to them. I don't know how many people here have met Tricia Turbolt, our country director, but her Mongolian colleagues as well. Well known for a wonderful language teacher, well known for a friendly library to drop into. But again, the 2 points I like to say to start with is simply that this association with Carrick is hugely important to us. Appreciate the support from the Smithsonian in that. And also, again, the center of gravity. This is not we have different affiliations in the States as well. We certainly have institutional and private members. But it's the center of gravity is Mongolia. That's what we're about. Maybe something to add as well, I think, in keeping with what the Government of Mongolia presentation is. Our view of Mongolia studies has been from the beginning very broad. Certainly language is important, certainly history is important, certainly culture is important, and those all figure prominently in ACMS programs. But that broader stream of things, including science, social science, things like global warming, things like the nomadic history of Mongolia, pretty much, how do you say it, I guess to sort of borrow from an expression, we're the American Center for Mongolian Studies. Nothing related to Mongolia is alien to us. We have the whole spectrum of stuff. We're interested in Mongolia, and if you look at the different programs, which I'm going to elaborate in just in a minute, that's an important thing to emphasize. In terms of the membership, which is one thing I do want to highlight, this is one thing that's required by our bylaws as well. At this point in time, we have 39 student members, of which almost all of them are international. We would welcome more of a Mongolian membership, and sometimes Mongolian students join to use the library, which is certainly fine. But that's the student membership. It's not huge. It's $20 a year is what it is. And then individual membership is sort of scholars. That stands at 70. About 60 of them are international. About 10 of them are Mongolian. Clearly, what's happened is we have our address list actually is in the hundreds. Anybody that's worked for an NGO knows that it's a challenge to get people to pay. So I'm talking about the fully paid up members. That also extends to some extent to the institutional membership. And I think I will just mention briefly, 3 universities have provided what we call assistance in kind to Mongolia over the past year, and they get their membership by, thank you for the donation. That includes University of Pennsylvania. Chris Atwood is here, thank you for that. It includes Royal Roads University, which is Charles's affiliation in Canada, and it includes Mercer University, where I've been working for the past year. It's only February, so we hope to get more. But in terms of the fully paid up membership, and some institutions have paid up even in advance up to 2022. But that includes University of Nebraska at Lincoln, University of Kansas, University of Arizona, Smithsonian Institute, School for International Training in Vermont, Rutgers University, Principia College, Colorado State University, and a number of people here know Cliff Montaigne. He's joined under By Regions International, which is an organization. There's a number of members. I don't know if anybody's here representing those institutions. Every institutional member gets has someone that's appointed. That's basically part of the broader board. But ones we're hoping to get some renewals on include Columbia, Macalester, University of Alaska, University of British Columbia, University of California, Berkeley, University of North Georgia, Western Washington, and Yale University. And there's a longer list of others that have been members, but again, we're sort of in the stage of the year where we're looking for renewals in terms of funding. And just this is partly a legal report. The ones I cited first are the ones that are formally institutional members of ACMS. The final part, I'm going to open up for questions as well. I mentioned I've been, or Bill mentioned I've been executive director for the last couple of years. Certainly have enjoyed that a lot. It's gotten me to Mongolia the last 2 summers, taking trips there, private trips, but associated with ACMS as well once I got there. But it's small NGOs, as some of you who work on them, it's a challenge. It's a continuing challenge. I describe them as sort of fragile flowers, and that's one of the challenges that, that's certainly out there. But it's been a wonderful experience. Like I said, I've been associated with KORC centers throughout my career. 7 of the 10 countries I've served have been there. I did formally step down at the end of September, and again, just because this is a Mongolian community and people, know some of my interests and background, my name is put forward to become a rector at a major university in Pakistan, in Lahore. This is going to come up in the next few weeks. There's obstacles along the way, to be honest, but basically it's in Lahore. People who know me know that my 2 loves are South Asia and Central Asia and the connections in between. And of course, Urdu, I don't speak Mongolian, but I do speak Urdu. And I think most of you know that Urdu must be the only language in the world that's named after, that derives from Mongolian, right? That was the court language of the Moguls. And again, you all with a Mongolian background know some of that history. And in fact, the founder of the Mughal Empire Babur was born in Fergana Valley in Uzbekistan in Central Asia, where I've served, founded his empire in India, much of which encompassed what's now Pakistan, and is in fact buried in Kabul. And I use that as an example of these connections between South Asia and Central Asia. But I'll continue, Mr. Ambassador, to maintain my interest. I especially appreciate our connection because I don't know if the ambassador is the only, there must be others as well in the Mongolian Foreign Service that speak Hindi and Urdu as I do. But I appreciate that connection. And I guess the only thing before I move on here quickly is if the government wants to support Mongolian studies in the 5th largest country in the world with a population of 220 million people and some ancient connections to Mongolia as well, that might be something to think about in the future. Again, moving very quickly, and when I promised to characterize the programs, the heart of what ACMS does is, of course, about the programs. And there's several things to say about that, but I think what I'll do is sort of link it to our sources of funding. And if anybody has any questions, how does an organization like this exist? I think there's 4 or 5 major grants we have, and I'll associate that with programs, with things that we have produced. I might also say, looking around the room, I see Julia and others here. Some people that were especially observant in some of the presentations might have seen that a number of the people involved in these presentations have had ACMS connections. We have a 15-year history. We give about 8 scholarships a year, some junior faculty, some PhD programs, some masters. And I think it's fair to say ACMS has played an influential role in developing people interested in Mongolia. But again, just to associate the programs, and the last part of what I'm going to do here, I'm going to end with a bunch of photographs, but I think I'll just do it by programs. A core grant we have is the Department of Education. These are all competitive grants that ACMS has to fight for. Hugely appreciative because Department of Education is actually a grant that is core funding, that lets us have an office, that lets us have a staff in UB, and lets us run programs. And out of that, having an office there, that means the library, that means our language programs. We do a summer intensive language program. We do survival Mongolian for expats, other kinds of things. But basically, it's that Department of Education that provides that presence. Also supports the lecture series. Some people may have attended there. And by the way, one of the things reported the last year, there's about 20 ACMS lectures every year. Involves Mongolian academics, involves American academics, involves academics from Europe and other places that are passing through. One of the innovations is for the past year, we have good quality recordings of virtually every lecture. And I brought them to people's attention that are teaching classes on Mongolian studies. They could use them thematically. They cover all kinds of areas. Julia's on there, by the way, and if people give approval, they're going to be on there. And I've suggested to professors that if you're especially tired and need a lecture in a day, and for some reason you're not prepared, turn into this thing, because it's a wide range of lectures, and they're very, very, very good. It's the ACMS YouTube channel. And again, that Department of Education makes things like this possible. The second big source of funding we have is the Department of State. The Department of State funding provides a bit of support to have an office, but the flagship part that the Department of State does are those 8 or so fellowships a year. And again, that introduces Americans to Mongolian Studies. I'm just going to reach over here for a second. The deadlines for these are coming up. It also funds, by the way, the monthly newsletter. This is 2 years' worth of my contribution. Not so back in the UB office is producing this now. It's a wonderful thing. It focuses mostly at the beginning on ACMS stuff, but it goes more broadly to Mongolian studies. It has new publications. It has links to new articles. It has interesting things associated with Mongolia. But that's part of it. But again, in terms of the Department of State funding, it's those 8 or so scholarships a year, which again over 10 years means around 80. And you do the math, and you can see that the difference that it makes. And I'm going to do the ones. This is a report for 2019, and I'm just going to say very briefly. And what you're going to see is you're going to see a number of Mongolians who teach at American universities that are successfully applying for these grants. And I think of the Mongolian American community here. Many, of course, are now growing up here, and at some level want to go back and study in Mongolia. These grants also provide an opportunity. What you're going to see, well, I'll just read them out. We have Undra Basanjov, assistant professor, Southern Illinois University, and she did one on new resources and information credibility for educational media and not-for-profit organizations in Mongolia. Linked in some ways, actually, to the last lecture that we had in terms of access to media, access to IT. You guys know, I don't know if Asa Cameron is here. He made a presentation earlier today. He's a PhD student at Yale University in anthropology, and he talked about crafting the nomadic state and talked about the different periods in Mongolian history, archaeology. His work was supported by ACMS. Shuri Inkbolt, some of these names, some people may be here. They're probably ACMS members, but University of Arizona. She did a very interesting study, Mongolian piano music, fusion of classical and folk styles in the piano works of Sharov. Again, strong Mongolian background, ACMS fellowship winner for this past year. Jennifer Facher, PhD student, University of Pittsburgh, anthropology. She talked about the interactions on the steppe and pastoralism in Mongolia, in particular regions of Mongolia. Abigail Golden, PhD student at Rutgers University, ecology, tracking the river wolf, habitat needs and home range size of the taimen, the legendary salmonoid of Mongolia that most of you are familiar with. Mary Lonsdale, PhD student at Johns Hopkins, looked at environmental change in Mongolia. Almost finished here, but Jennifer Molchin, BA student at Western Kentucky University, she did a ceramic analysis. And of course, earlier today we had some interesting lectures on that. Emily Odell, she looked at the Islamic identity among Mongolia's Kazakh minority. And then Emily Friend, and she was, by the way, a research scholar at Yale University School of Law. And then Emily Smith, assistant professor at Johns Hopkins University, talked about the Mongolian record of environmental change during early animal evolution. So I list them just to indicate the breadth of stuff, the types of backgrounds. I think what you mostly see are a mix of, there was one undergraduate there, one very interested undergraduate, and it was really commendable that she got accepted for a grant. Mostly MA and PhD students, but some junior faculty as well. And you can see the broad range of topics that were covered. There's also a library fellowship. You go to the ACMS website and you'll see that some of the deadlines are coming due. But that's, in most years, we've had that funding from Department of State, and that's vital. And again, it's vital for bringing Americans and connecting them in Mongolia. Another recent grant, and I should say very quickly, because I don't know, again, they may be here right now. It's the Ambassador's Fund for Cultural Preservation. When I served as ambassador, we were very successful. These are highly competitive in the Department of State. We got one for Amur Baskalan Monastery for a system to save it if it ever got on fire. You know, they burn a lot of candles there, and it's the sprinkler system and some of the preservation there, other kinds of things. But basically, this year, if you look at our budget, we have funds from the embassy, and this is working out very closely with Smithsonian, as Bill knows, And we are there the three participants here? Yeah, no. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Joy. Thank you all three are here. No, that's great. And Erd Netzig from the Institute of Archaeology, Bat Jargel from the National Center of Cultural Heritage, and Muktago from the National Museum of Mongolia, all here as part of this program. And I'd like to say this because ACMS isn't only about sending Americans to Mongolia, but there's reciprocal visits. And thank you all for coming. I know it's been a long process. Thank you, Julia, for also, and others as well. I know Paula, I think Paula's here as well, yeah, and Bill and everybody. But that's been a wonderful program, and that particular program is funded by the Department of State, but the embassy in Ulaanbaatar has to make the case for it. And they were very successful, and thank you for that. This is textile preservation that's going on. Again, the Ambassador's Fund for Cultural Preservation is part of it. And then the sort of flagship program, and there is some brochures on this for this year, and again, this is a report on this year, was the first ever ACMS Mongolia Field School. And again, Julia led the one on archaeology. There was also one on renewable energy, and there was also one on the question that was raised earlier in the last session about migration to Ulaanbaatar, or rural-urban migration. 3 programs, 60 people involved, 120 applications. This is Luce Foundation funded, private foundation. Their funding made possible a number of scholarships, and they also made possible the idea to experiment and see if this works. Of course, there's hiccups in the first year, although I will say that the evaluations were very positive, and it was very great to see that, and to see if field school is viable. Another thing about this field school is it involves Mongolian students. And again, those of you here from Mongolia or have cousins and relatives that are students in Mongolia, this is unlike many field schools where you go in a bubble and you're the American team or the German team or whatever. It pairs from the very beginning. Julia would maybe tell more about it, but it consciously pairs Mongolian students with American participants. And I say American participants because if you look at the 60 people that participated, not only does that include the Mongolians, but it also includes a mix of undergraduates, first experience in Mongolia. It includes junior faculty, want to look up about renewable energy, want to experience a summer dig, you can participate. And it also includes what we call lifelong learners, which are frankly sometimes retired people. Again, people that have always dreamed of being on an archaeological dig, and they will participate. So it's a neat program, and we've considered it successful so that we have six ones. Simon is up here, and potentially both of you are leading. Is it a joint one you're leading together? I'm sorry? You're leading a program. That's right, yes. We're actually 7 as the individuals. Okay, great. Of course, yeah, and just very quickly, so people know they can get it as you leave, but this includes, Sunman and Simon doing Word and Sound in Mongolian Culture, which I think is a brilliant topic and a brilliant course. That's coming up. Peter Bittner, many of you know him. He's doing journalism in Mongolia. Again, a very interesting one. There's on climate change and herding. There's Mongolian Buddhism. Again, on climate change and public health. Future of the Gobi Desert, environment, humans, and mining in northern Mongolia. So an interesting mix. Again, as you leave, there's the details that's certainly on the webpage as well. That deadline, too, is coming up, and would really encourage people to look at it seriously, especially in the first 3 years with loose funding. There's potential for scholarships in a way that may not be the case a couple years from now. And so that would be a really cool program to participate as well. This potentially, again, since this is part of a report about ACMS, potentially could contribute to the sustainability of an organization like ACMS if we can demonstrate if people are willing to come to Mongolia, study seriously, be more than tourists, but participate in greater depth, that this could be part of it as well. Other kinds of things, I'm about to finish. I'm going to finish with some pictures to visualize some of the stuff that's happened. Again, the presence there, the lectures I think is very important. I've mentioned the YouTube channel that you can go through and look at some wonderful topics. We had about 20 lectures last year. It's typically a couple a month. And both, if you're in town and want to come and see it, but also thinking of this group here, it's a great opportunity. Talk to Tricia about potentially putting on a lecture yourself and some of your area of research. And some people, again, Julie would, I think, attest to this, is some people, the early results. Oftentimes we get our Brian Harden is actually an at-large member of the board. We took this group of 16 Mercer students that frankly would never experience Mongolia. For most of them, well, for some of them, this was the first trip out of the country. For most of them, it was the first trip to Asia. For all of them, it was the first trip to Mongolia. And Jack Weatherford happened to be in town and very kindly hosted the group. But that's an example of that. Other groups that came last year was Bryn Mawr. Many people familiar with Bryn Mawr. UPenn, for the past couple of years, or more than that perhaps, has been sending some of their business school students. That's part of the program. Another interesting, well, Berkeley had some teachers. They had a training program. They came out. The cultural exposure program is what it was, but ACMS arranged some of their tours. In the past, they've arranged tours to the Gobi Desert and to UB and stuff like that. So that's an example of something that doesn't come under the big-time funding, but those of you associated with universities, ACMS can be very helpful in that. What I'm going to do, you can think if there's any questions after this. Hope I haven't forgot anything important, but I think we've covered, our legal obligations with certainly the membership report and the comment on the financial thing. But I'm going to go through very quickly. Julia, you may be in one of these pictures. You're welcome to chime in if you want. But I'll just do this as an example. The office in UB sent it to me a couple days ago as sort of highlights of the year, as it were. And that was that great group of 16 Mercer students. Is Fiona in there? I don't know if we're in there. But anyway, that was a... Oh, yeah, Fiona was taking the picture. Okay. I still keep in touch with these. By the way, one of those guys sent me an email. He went from Mercer to do his fall semester in Korea. And he said, Mr. or Dr. Addelton, you'll be very happy to know that I did my bachelor's thesis on Genghis Khan. And, again, these are students that would never ordinarily get to Mongolia. So that was kind of cool. And one of them, by the way, and I think she's a very good candidate. I know there's also someone here who got a Fulbright. I won't point out which one it is, but she put Mongolia #1 on an application for a English teaching program for Fulbright for next year. And she's a semifinalist, so I'm quite hopeful that she may get it as well. And again, I love to see Mongolia figure in these kinds of things. So I guess this was the same visit. This is a bit of the office, though, same group. This was a group, could it be the UPenn group, I think, going to the Erdenet mine? I said, yeah, so Chris recognizes some of these guys. And, again, I can tell you that not every student group going to Mongolia gets to see, a personal tour of the Erdenet mine. And that's what ACMS was able to arrange here. Let's see. This is another group. I'm guessing potentially perhaps the Bryn Mawr group. But you can see, could this be Gandan Monastery? Is that what it looks like? Yeah, so that's another, and again, you think of the numbers of and this is just all last year. These are some of the highlights from last year. This was an ACMS field trip, I guess you could call it. This looks like the ROTC students. This is the military museum. And of course, because of the military connection, the military museum hosted them. I think what is it called? The National Defense University in Mongolia. Anyway, that was a program that ACMS also helped set up. Again, these are just some of the student groups, some of the visitors, some of the people who, again, Mongolia this may be their first chance in Mongolia. This is the field school, right? Yeah, so you can see that group. It's not the whole group, because the whole group was bigger. If you ever want to say anything, George, feel free, but this was part of that. And yeah, this would be the whole group, and again, Julie was probably there. This was hosted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And that's talking about, you might be interested to know in that as well, and you were probably aware of it. But that's that great hall where they have receptions, and it must have been a highlight. I wasn't there, but it must have been a highlight to have, you've just arrived as part of the field school, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs hosts you for a visit. So that, again, is neat. I think a lot of these are going to be the field school. I mentioned the field school is one of the highlights of the year. I'm pretty sure this is the field school. And maybe the rest of the pictures might be the field school, but this looks like, I don't know if you recognize some of the ones. Again, back to is this still the UPenn group? The Mercer group also went to Erdenet. Oh, actually, the one we just saw would have been the Renewable Energy Program, I think. Yeah, they had an energy group, which was really, really good. And I have to tell my great story about energy in Mongolia. I think they went to Salkut Hill. Anybody been to Salkut Hill? It's the largest wind turbine power generating place in Mongolia. My pronunciation is awful, but you guys know what Salkut Hill means, right? Windy Hill. Windy Hill. And I thought, here it is. You probably paid a consultant $100,000 to tell you that there was wind on Salkut. It's a private joke, but you guys might appreciate that. My son is involved in renewable energy, and I told this story to him, and he said he would tell it all over the place because it's such a great story that you put your biggest set of turbines in Mongolia on Windy Hill. Anyway, it was this. This is part of the field school as well, I think. Again, this is a small portion of the library, which tries to be welcome for people coming through. I think the person on the right was a ACMS summer, was a fellowship. It's the language school. Yeah, no, thanks. I'm sorry for not getting this. This actually just arrived, but these are some of the language school participants. The intensive summer language student program is basically for foreigners who already have some Mongolian. But the reviews on that have been very good. It really consolidates people in terms of foreigners beginning to really understand Mongolian. And again, this is probably the language school as well, I'm guessing. So a little bit of the library, you get a sense for that. Some of you may know some of the people that are appearing in these pictures. Again, this is an example of the ACMS library, summer students. This actually, now that I think about it, these are our summer fellows. And I would really encourage people, our research fellows that are doing master's and PhD, if you go to the ACMS YouTube channel, you will see them talk about their projects. And it's like 5 minutes or 8 minutes, but it gives you, in terms of up-and-coming research, it gives you great insights. And by the way, the ACMS has also put other ones. I think the one we've gotten the most views on, several thousand views by this time, is how to take public transportation in Ulaanbaatar. And this was put together by the ACMS summer intern, Mongolian citizen who was studying at an American university and came back and did a wonderful video. Again, look at our YouTube channel, especially if you have any questions about how to negotiate buses in there. So more pictures here. These are all some of our summer fellows that are shown there, the ones that I listed at the very beginning. Looting conservation and 800-year-old butter. How many people saw that presentation here earlier today? It was a great presentation. I think that everybody, when they find out about 800-year-old butter, thinks that's pretty cool, as it is. And ACMS has a connection with those kinds of things. Others are involved as well, but we take pride in being connected to that kind of thing. And yeah, there's Julia. And I think if you want to go to the YouTube channel, you can show it to your class about the challenges in Mongolia. Lecture series, obviously, one of many lectures. I think it was about 20 last year. Again, another presentation. Looking through that. That's at the UB Public Library, by the way, where we hold them. This is an audience at one of those lectures that we regularly do. And as you can see, some of the audiences can be quite large. I think the ACMS has also done a few other things. I think this might have been the academic writing workshop that ACMS held. And again, if you look at this picture, some of you will recognize some of the people there. This may be the academic workshop as well. Just indicative of, Joe, you can tell us what that one is maybe. Oh, that's the lecture. That's the lecture hall again. And again, some of the projects almost finished here. And there it is. That's the stuff. So sorry for keeping it a little bit late. I hope it was interesting. I would love to answer questions, including tough and hard questions about ACMS. I, again, was involved, in fact, way back in the day as ambassador, had all the KORCs, all 27 of them, state representatives of Ulaanbaatar, and we hosted a big reception for them, very actively involved. When we were there, our daughter used the ACMS library for her high school research on projects connected to Mongolia. And, and to sort of, at the end, come back to the States after retiring from the Foreign Service. Thought it would end up being longer, but because of this opportunity I've talked about, I am moving on back to Asia. But ACMS, I think, is a vital institution. And, again, the numbers of people that have participated in different ways, the programs that they facilitated, the engagements they have in Mongolia, I think it's great. And again, I'll continue to be involved, to be honest, after I depart. But any last minute questions? Any thoughts? I know it's a bit late in the day. Yeah. You alluded, Bill alluded to it. There's different conversations about potential homes. Charles Kruskoff, of course, has had huge contributions throughout time, and in some sense, I guess, would be considered the managing director right here. But again, I will say that the center of gravity, and one of the conversations is potentially even more, more of the management, if you will, even going back to Ulaanbaatar for different reasons. So there's different kind of scenarios being considered. But in terms of my absence, Charles is the go-to person if people have questions. The ACMS webpage is also a go-to in that sense. But things are going on. I mean, we're planning for the summer programs, both the fellowship programs and the other programs. I mentioned I've been producing the newsletter for the last 2 years. Naso took it over a couple months ago, and his productions are better than mine. So I think you can say that it's in great hands. And again, that's one of the things, both on the accounting and now the public affairs. Some of you may have met Naso. He was a Fulbrighter in the States from Mongolia. And I think it was at Temple University, if I'm not mistaken, but is making a great contribution to the public affairs side and is actually producing the monthly newsletter right now. Monthly newsletter, we're always very open to announcements on anything related to Mongolia. Links, interesting things happened. Mongolian student, I think, gave the valedictorian address at his university in Alaska, and we were happy to put that down. We like to spread the word about Mongolia in any kind of way, shape, or form. And I think you'll be intrigued by some of the links that we include and some of the little announcements about interesting things related to Mongolia all over the world.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think this is a very appropriate time to have us collectively thank Jonathan for a tremendous job. The energy he's put into this, he leaped into this position without quite realizing how much effort it was going to be. There's a lot of financial business. There's a lot of technicalities to running this group. And fortunately, we have Charles Kruskoff, who's back there, helping us at every turn, too. So he will take over as interim director. But I want to thank Jonathan for amazing service to us. And I know it's done with dedication and heartfelt enthusiasm. We wish you best in the next stage of your life. A lot of people would be thinking of the canoe or the back porch or something or other at this stage, but Jonathan is perhaps going to be leaping into another really important phase. And Fiona is going to be there with him, and we'll hear reports from Pakistan. And we just want to thank you so much.
Thank you so much.